This episode of the Nerd Corporation podcast may contain spoilers and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. We are the Nerd Corporation.
What up, everybody? It's podcast day. My name is Eddie Lyon, and fuck Donatello, Mikey was the best. With me, as always, is Derek Reese.
Nice night.
Nice night.
For those of you who don't know what that's from, it's a very minor, throwaway line from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Pizza Guy's got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's from that scene right there. Cole Simper and Nick Lewis couldn't be with us today. They're out with the regular old mud butt. But we are the Nerd Corporation. Welcome to episode 182, The Shelled and the Furious Family. We're going to be talking about the 5-arc run of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin. We're going to talk about each book, and we'll rate the entire series as a whole and what we thought about it. But before we get into that, let's get on with the nerd news.
Yeah. So my first bit of news is far less news in the sense of real news and much more in the vicinity of conjecture and rumor.
Okay.
But supposedly, and it's hilarious because even the article goes very in depth about how full of shit this might be. So I'll actually read you some of this because it made me laugh.
Yeah.
But apparently Norman Reedus is quote unquote reportedly playing Ghost Rider in an MCU Blade movie.
So that would mean the Mahershala Ali movie.
Right. So, and it's so funny because they, at first, in the first sentence, they sound so excited about it. And they're like, Marvel Cinematic Universe never ceases to surprise its fans with exciting casting news and unexpected character crossovers. The latest buzz, so that right there.
Right, yeah, right there immediately.
That word right there. Okay, this is clearly just rumor. The latest buzz in the superhero universe is that Norman Reedus, best known for his role as Daryl Dixon, yada, 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 is reportedly, another keyword there, set to make his debut as Ghost Rider in the upcoming Blade movie. And then here's where they say the quiet part right out loud. They go, this news comes from Giant Freaking Robot, which is an interesting, if a little hit and miss source for exclusive entertainment news. We have no idea if this is real or not.
Don't quote us.
This is just a thing we heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that could be a thing.
Very cool. Very cool. I don't think I want that.
You know, I think he could do a good job. I don't
Think so?
Yeah. I mean, I think he could do a serviceable job. He certainly would not have been my first choice.
Yeah.
But I definitely would not be surprised if they did, considering his general popularity and how long it's been as big as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
In gaming news, Mortal Kombat 1 DLC has been released.
Ooh.
We'll be getting Homelander from The Boys, Peacemaker from John Cena's Peacemaker,
Right.
Omni-Man from Invincible. Like, those will be the non-MK DLC characters.
Nice.
Which I think is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like a Homelander Omni-Man fight. Like,
Right.
even if controlled by humans is pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Other characters in the DLC are Quan Chi, Ermac, and Takeda. So even before the game comes out, we already know what we're getting for DLC.
Right.
Which is kind of weird for me, I feel like, because, DLC announcements usually come, a few months after the game's released or whatever. I can only imagine what's going through Cole's brain right now. This is not how this goes.
Right.
But yeah, that's my news for that.
Ryan Reynolds and his company Maximum Effort have joined as, I believe, co-producer of a new animated series of biker mice from Mars.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is what Ryan Reynolds said about it. Some people know that I am a motorcycle enthusiast, so it was only natural for us to jump on board Biker Mice from Mars. Maximum Effort and Fubo look forward to putting a new spin on this cult classic with our friends at Nacelle.
Huh. That's dope.
Right? For those of you who don't know, the Biker Mice from Mars story is that on Mars, there was a race of anthropomorphic mice who loved motorcycling and had a very similar, culture and existence to humans. And they were eventually nearly wiped out by a race called the Plutarchians. They're just these fish people things that, they were awful. And they just plunder planets for natural resources like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just sort of the general thrust of the series. But yeah, no, so these biker mice are going to crash land on Earth in Chicago. Like 4 of them, it looks like normal, but, and then, they're going to be trying to get back home to Mars.
Hell yeah.
There's also a Maximum Effort channel, and this will be the first animated series on it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
That's way cool.
Premiere date to be announced, but yeah, it's going to be, I guess, the Maximum Effort channel, or let's see. It's curated by, the channel will be available on Fubo as well as Amazon Freevee, LG Channels, Plex, Sling Freestream, Tubi, Vita, Vizio, Watch Free Plus, and Zumo Play. So
everything besides the major players, pretty much.
Yeah, that channel is going to be pretty much easy to get a hold of. But
hell yeah. You know what this means? We're getting that much closer to a Street Sharks reboot.
Right?
Give me all of that shit, dude.
I mean, I'll be super stoked just for the Biker Mice from Mars.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if you give me Street Sharks or Attack of the Killer Tomatoes,
you know what I want, and this is going back a little bit further, slightly further, because I mean we're already getting X-Men 97,
Right.
But I would like, what was it called? Lone Star? No. Brave Star.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some Brave Star.
Dude, that'd be dope. Just reboot them all, and if they suck, just take them off the air.
I mean, they sucked the first time, so...
Yeah.
We were just too dumb to realize.
Before we get into the subject of the hour, if you're listening on YouTube, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that little bell notification. We want to get into as many nerdy ears as possible, and that's the best way to do that. Even if you're not on YouTube, just head over to YouTube, give us a little thumbs up or something, subscribe, hit the bell. It won't hurt. It won't hurt.
And if it does, it'll be a good kind of hurt.
We have merch. Redbubble.com/NerdCorp podcast. Get our NerdCorp order shirts and our NerdCorp branch shirts. Redbubble.com/NerdCorp podcast. If you love us and want to support what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/NerdCorp podcast. Several tiers of loot to have access to, from stickers and shirts to extra content and bonus episodes. If you can't make a monthly contribution, consider supporting us on PayPal. PayPal.me/NerdCorp podcast. We want to have the best loot, give you the best giveaways, and give you the best nerdy experience, and that is the best way to do that. So, The Last Ronin.
Yes.
I mean, what a cool story.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I really, really liked it.
And it's a lot darker than it was what you would figure a Ninja Turtle comic book would be. You know what I mean?
Well, haven't they like generally been pretty dark? I mean, like I never got into the comics. I mean, so all I had to go off of was the kids' cartoon, which obviously is going to be a lot more lighthearted and
right. And that and I guess that's what I'm basing my comparison on, because I haven't read very many Turtle comic books, but I just loved this like crazy tone that it took. We'll start off with number one. The Last Ronin, part 1 of 5. Writers were Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, and Tom Waltz. Artists were Esau, Isaac Escorza, and Ben Bishop. Colorist was Luis Antonio Delgado. Letterer Sean Lee. Editor Bobby Kernrow. Developed by IDW Publishing. In a future New York City far different than the one we know today, a lone surviving turtle goes on a seemingly hopeless mission to obtain justice for his fallen family and friends. I remember when they first announced this, and everybody's like, who would be the Last Ronin? Which one is it?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it's Mikey. Like,
see, I was thinking Raph.
I thought, I knew. I was like, no, it's Mikey. Like that would be the most, like, aha moment. Like, if you were writing something like this. It's Mikey.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we see a turtle. We see him running around the streets of New York, like infiltrating the streets and trying to, like, he's just like on this like crazy death mission, right?
Well, yeah, and all of the robot sentry sort of guards and everything that now basically run the city.
And we notice he's going for this like giant tower, and it ends up being Hiroki Tower, which is the tower that Oroku Hiroki lives in. And Oroku Hiroki is the grandson of Uroku Saki, the Shredder. And like, this whole first episode is just kind of him talking to himself and hearing the other 4 turtles or whatever, but like you know they're in his head or whatever. The coloring in this series is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not even just the coloring though. Like all of the artistry is just fucking sick.
It's so good. Like the flashback scenes that are in like this almost papyrus color.
Yeah.
Like,
and I don't think you don't even see the other turtles when he's, you know, having these
like conversations
with his dead brothers. Like I don't think you even see them until like the second
it's like
book.
The second or third book.
Yeah, second or third, but it's really cool how they're sort of gray washed. And he's vibrant and normal, but like, so, you know, they even give you the visual representation that they're not really real.
Yeah.
Which is just, that was just a really subtle, nice touch.
Right. The Foot Clan is replaced by these like cyborg, like robot things. Like it's very much trying to tell you that this is like far into the future. You know, very like it had a very Fifth Element feel with like the floating cars and like, you know, there being like bottom dwellers and
like different levels of city, of existence, of society.
You know, so he makes his way up to the top, fighting century after century after, you know, bot and car and everything, and
like all the Mousers.
Dude, when the Mousers came out, I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, right?
That's fucking cool.
But they're like flying Mousers now.
Yeah, they're like flying Mousers, and this giant robot comes in and just kind of like knocks him over. And the whole time he's going up he's going up Hiroki Tower, he is just yelling out for Oroku Hiroki. He's just like, face me, you coward. I'm going to give you what, you know, this is for my brothers. You know, fuck your mother. You're like, Like, he is trying everything in the book to antagonize this guy, but he ends up getting hit with this giant robot, and they end up flying out of the tower, and he just eats it. Like, he pretty much just gets in there.
Yeah.
And he escapes into a sewer system, and he's like, fuck, I failed. This is not the mission that I wanted.
Well, and he's also like, how am I still alive?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how I'm alive, but I failed, so it's time for some seppuku.
Yeah.
And so he was going to kill himself and passed out before he could. And somebody finds him, and, he kind of flatlines for a minute, and he wakes up, and he's in he's with his brothers. They're like, yeah, man, we're at the old lair. Like, where have you been? And he wakes up, kind of, and, someone's like, oh, thank God you're up. And it's this aged April O'Neil.
Yeah.
Who could still get it, by the way.
Oh, for real? Easily.
But, she's like, I'm so relieved to see you awake. You really worried me there, but who were you talking to, Michelangelo? And that's the big, the big reveal, right? Yeah. Oh, it was Mikey. It was fucking Mikey.
Well, and by the way, can we talk too about, God, every time, because they do it a couple times throughout the run, but every time Mikey is sitting there in front of the weapons of his brothers that he's held on to and that he uses throughout the series. Damn, dude. That's so heavy.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's crazy to see a bloodied bow staff and a half snapped katana, you know what I mean? I like his in the later episodes, I like the use of that he's using the tanbo.
Yeah.
Those are really cool. But yeah, there are very subtle but heavy undertones.
Right. Yeah, and it's so I really like the difference because I noticed it, but I didn't pay attention really to it until they started talking more about wow, your mutation has definitely has definitely gone forward. Things are still changing because he's huge and ripped.
Yeah, he is stacked.
He is fucking ripped. And of course the fall that should have killed him, etc. But whenever they go do the flashbacks, they're, the old smaller turtles and everything, and the mutagen hasn't advanced to the degree that it is in this future date, and it's just that was just a nice touch.
It was
to, show that throwback where they're all tiny.
I agree. No, I completely agree. We go to the next one,
and it opens on second time around.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that so much.
It does. The antique shop that April used to own. So this second one, it starts off on a flashback, and it's April and Casey, and they're talking about we're so excited to tell them what's taking them so long, and Casey's like, the sewers, they're weird, but then they're like, yeah, no, they are taking a really long time, aren't they? And as soon as they say that, Raphael bursts through the door and is like, make some room, throws off this whole feast that they made for each other.
And he's all fucked up.
They bring in Splinter, and he's just all jacked up, and it's this, he's dead. He's done.
Yeah, he's pretty much toast.
Casey's like, who ambushed you? And he was like, it was the Foot. I'm going to go back there and I'm going to, fuck all of them up. And, of course, Leonardo comes in and he's like, hey, we're good. You don't need to do nothing. Everything's all right. And, they sit and talk for a minute. He's lost so much blood. We're doing the best we can, but without a real doctor. And while they were talking through all of that, they didn't realize that Raph had just slipped away. Next week, we see April and she's getting up and she's reaching for a prosthetic hand and she's reaching for her prosthetic leg. And she yells out, "Hey, Casey, a little help here." But we see Casey's bag, his hockey sticks and his mask. So we assume that she's, just kind of yelling out to the void or whatever, trying to talk to Casey. I love this book a lot because it tells a lot more of the story. Like, and the
backstory.
Yeah. And this is how we start, seeing everything happen. And it's like, what's going on? We go back to the flashback of Raphael and he's on his way, to kill the Foot. And this time, the Foot is run by Oroku Karai, which is the Shredder's daughter.
Right.
Which is Oroku Hiroki's mother. He just shows up at one of their, Foot rallies and is like, "I'm fucking killing all of you."
Right.
So, he's having this epic battle. He's taking them out, though, one by one. And he goes, "You ambushed my family. You killed my father. Only one way this ends. Stop hiding behind these scrubs and we'll finish this once and for all." And, she comes in, they're having their little fight. "My soldiers may have failed to take your head, mutant, but I won't," and they both end up falling into the ocean, I would assume.
Yeah, or river, something.
Like a body of water. And, he stabs her in the back. And I think she gets him.
Like underneath the chin.
Yeah. And so, they both fall to a watery grave. And there's this dope ass fucking, full panel picture of Raph's side just kind of descending into the water. With
blood too, the top of it just sort of going through the water and away from the side.
It was so good.
We also, right before that though, get a little bit of backstory in the form of, this is where we see Mikey talking to the three darkened turtles.
Right. They're just in the background and they're darkened out.
They're sort of where Mikey is straight up green. They're sort of this darker grayish green, but and in that, they're all pretty much bickering back and forth about his attempt on the tower.
Right.
And that's where he says straight out that from the very beginning, that assault that he was making on the tower was a one-way trip.
Yeah, that. This was I wasn't trying to get out alive from this. This was a suicide mission from jump.
But yeah, so I mean, it's great because it gives us all that backstory with what happened to Raph and just how the truce is breaking down and everything. But it also gives us a little bit more insight into what was going on when we came into the story.
Right, exactly. Mikey wakes up and he's just kind of out of it. And April's like, "What are you doing up? You should be resting." And he's like, "I couldn't sleep. I'm going to get some tea." And she's like, "Yeah, have some tea. It's from when you stayed here." She was like, I got a little something else to perk me up. He's looking at her arm and she's like, "My arm?" And he's like, "Yeah, sorry." She's like, "I got one, souvenirs from the last time we saw each other. Let me make some food." And she tries to lighten the mood and everything's chill.
Yeah, because he didn't think anybody except him made it out.
Yeah, he thought everybody. From April to Casey to Master Splinter to his brothers. He thought he literally was the last one. And so while she's making his food or whatever, he's like, they talk about how he fell and he's like, that should kill me, and he's like, "But instead I'm up, and she's like, "Well, I'm no Donatello, but it doesn't take genius to see that your mutation has progressed over the years. You're bigger, stronger, and you're healing amazingly fast. The funny thing about this panel is that it looks like April's like hollering at him. She's not like calmly explaining like, well, I'm no Donatello. Her face is like, her mouth is like wide open.
Yeah, and she's like pointing a spatula at him like as she's yelling at him.
Yeah, and I'm like, why is she hollering at him like this? Like, why is she yelling? You know, so he's like, I don't know, my head's kind of fuzzy.
And these next couple boxes like pissed me off. Like they pissed me off at the bottom, like these two panels.
Yeah, and you know, he's like, I don't know, I still don't know how I got back to the lair. And she goes, hold that thought. And the bottom two panels is like, Casey, breakfast. And Mikey's got this like surprised look on his face.
Freaks out. He like throws his coffee.
Yeah. And he's
or
like,
his tea rather.
Yeah, he's like, wait, what? Casey's still alive?
Wait, no. Excuse me.
And he's like, what? Casey's still alive? And he's like, Michelangelo, I'd like you to meet my daughter, Casey Marie Jones. And you know, they talk about how.
And isn't she who he stole the motorcycle from? Because like wasn't she that boss of those dudes?
I don't think so. I think that was somebody else. They were wearing like this like weird top hat, and they had like this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that was somebody else.
Okay.
But she was like, "Yeah, we already met." Like, you know.
Yeah, because she was like, at the end when he had fallen, there was. I mean, he was alive, but he was not in any condition to make an escape. And so the other sentries, whatever, were trying to find him. Mm-hmm. And she and her guys, her crew happened to be right there. And so they sort of hit him and got him down into the sewer.
Right. Yep. And so, you know, she starts going off and she's like, oh my goodness, it's so weird. I've been hearing about you Turtles all my life, but I never thought I'd get to meet one of you for real, you know. And she's like, and he's still like kind of dumbfounded. He's like, Casey?
Yeah. And
she's like, yep, that's me. And you're supposed to be the funny one, right? You know, like I said, lots of catching up to do. We go head over to Hiroki Tower, and Oroku Hiroki's like, you know, show me a decent fight. Kill me. Or I'll have you killed. And it's a few panels of, you know,
just showing how badass he is against his people that are supposed to protect him.
Right. Which would lead you to believe you need better people.
Right?
Like, if they're not even putting up a fight, like, why are they your people?
I mean, they're just, you know, cannon fodder.
Pretty much, you know.
As all henchmen are.
And, you know, so he's just belittling them and, you know, telling them, like, yeah, masterful hit. If you were a master, And he has crows around him, like, all the time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he goes to his captain and he's like, hey, has our problem been solved? And
he says, no, master, the rogue mutant has not yet been located.
Right. And he's just like, man, you know, there was a time when those things slinked through the alleys and across the rooftops of this city with near impunity. You know, they even had the utter audacity to call themselves a ninja.
They even had an ostentatious turtle-themed vehicle.
Right.
Like the cartoon.
You know, and he goes, you know, he goes on that big villain monologue where he tells his, you know, captain, he's like, I'll allow you this one time to screw up, but if you don't, your newly appointed role as captain will end just as your predecessor. And they go over and there's this pyre and there's a skeleton on it, and the crows that he owns are like pecking the eyes out of it. It's a pretty cool visual.
Yeah. I mean, like a little bit more graphic than I was actually expecting.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I was like, damn. All right.
Absolutely. and so Casey comes, we go back to April, to the old turtle lair, and Casey brings Mikey into her like her gym, like her little workout area or whatever, and she's like, yeah, no, I've learned like Kempo. And
in this one panel, or this one page of panels, they start talking about how New York is set up now.
Oh, right.
Because that's Mikey's been gone. He went to go, and it gets into this in later books, but when things went down, he went to Japan to go find Splinter and, was it Donatello?
Donatello, yeah.
And so he had been gone. Like, he only recently came back to New York to find it in the state that it was in.
Yeah, and so she was like, we have our levels,
They're in rock bottom, and then...
Yeah, there's 30 districts, top, middle, and bottom. Rock bottom's the old street level. And, she starts to get into how, like, oh, we need to, save.
Right.
We need to, like, help bring our people out from under the gutter, you know what I mean? And April's like, well, in due time.
Like, I got my plan. Like, you can do whatever, but...
Yeah. And so then Casey brings Michelangelo into the old like workout, dojo area, and so like, I've been doing it since I was little. When you grow up in the middle of all this, and she's like, she's just like geeking out about how like all of the stories that April used to tell her, and she's like, I can't believe I'm here with one of you to do all of that.
Well, yeah, and then they spar and everything, and, he's like, all right, well, I mean, you're good. You're completely undisciplined, but not bad for somebody who's not been fully, like, actually trained.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of this little session, when she finally is like, all right, I quit, she asks him where he's been all this time. So it's actually, like, at the end of this book that they go into the fact that he had left and went to go find Splinter and everything. Right.
And so, there's this table with like a cloth on it, and she like pulls the cloth, and it was all the weapons, and he was like, thank you. Like, these are really personal to me, so I appreciate it. And she's like, sure. Once I saw who you were, I didn't want to leave anything behind, considering what you were about to do. I understand why, the honor of it or whatever. And, he's like, have you told your mother? She's like, no, I'm not going to tell her, and he's like, and, he was like, thank you. And she was like, actually, you can thank me by telling me more about this book. And she grabs this book, and she's like, my Japanese ain't the greatest, but I understand enough to know this is a special handwritten journal, and, like instructions for all kinds of martial arts styles, techniques, important life lessons. And he's like, yeah, something like that. It was my father's. And she was like, can I ask you a question? Where have you been all this time? And so it goes into our first like little flashback panel. He's like, I just started walking, into the mountain. A kid from the sewers of lower Manhattan, straight into the wild. Bad idea. I'd seen photos of snow-covered mountains, but never set foot on one, and being cold-blooded, I didn't have a chance. So I found a place to meet my end. And, later on it started to get warm, and...
Like, his body just wouldn't let him die.
Yeah. And so he, he's like, eventually it got warmer, and the mountains, provided sustenance and solitude. He read and reread Splinter's book, looking for some kind of like balance, maybe even a final piece. And then, these people came in and just started like whooping on him, right? Like, isn't that what it said?
Yeah, they basically just some people that wanted to hurt him just because they wanted to hurt something.
Yeah, they were like, oh, look at that freak. Let's kill the monster. At first he welcomed the pain, and he's like, at least I felt something after all that time. And then he's like, and then I saw the looks on their faces, laughing, taking a life just to take a life. And, the flashback, goes to him just like on top of all of them. Like, he was just like, all right, well, enough is enough. And, so he's like, it was time to come home to face it. And, to complete my master's mission and kill the last Oroku. And she's like, well, what's this on the last page? And it looks like it's been just like scribbled in. It says no peace. He snatches it and says, like, means I need, I still got a lot of work to do. And she's like, well, cool, because I'm going to help you. And he's like, no, I appreciate the offer, but I won't be responsible for anyone else getting killed because of me. And, we start to get her a little bit of attitude from Casey Marie. And she's like, well, I wasn't asking. Like, I'm going to help you whether you like it or not. We cut over to April, and she's going into this safe, and it's just her going through the combination, and she pulls out, and what she pulls out is Dr. Honeycutt's head.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends for that.
Which was, so I don't remember anything about Honeycutt. Was he always a robot?
I don't remember.
Because I feel like it's a person's brain inside the robot.
Yeah, it was the Fujitoid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it's a scientist's brain stuck in a robot body.
Okay.
And Professor Zayton Honeycutt.
So now we jump into book 3, Fight or Flight. So we come upon the scene right off the bat of Oroku Hiroto becoming the leader, the de facto leader of the Foot, because his mom, Oroku Karai, is basically out of commission. She's not dead, but she's in some sort of little stasis thingy that keeps her alive, but she's, obviously worthless. She can't lead them. So, it's basically him accepting that mantle. And
so on the next page, he's just like, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to broker peace with the Hamato clan.
Yeah. So he goes into, I don't, they make it seem like, because he's talking to his generals and everything, so they make it seem like it's something that he's legit trying to do. But, I think it's pretty intentional that they don't really question it.
Right.
Like they don't actually go, are you sure? Like, is that really what we're going to do?
Right.
They just roll with it.
Yeah. This is like decades long war.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, okay.
All right. So to me, that immediately made me go, sure.
Right. Yeah. Cause I'm just like, all right, buddy.
Like, they just basically killed your mom, and you're like, let's call it quits.
Yeah, let's call the whole thing off.
Like, this is what I was born into, but whatever.
I don't want to.
So, yeah. And then it flashes back to present time. So basically, we flash back to present time, and with the fact that he now knows a turtle is still out there.
Right.
He declares martial law.
Yes.
And just locks everything the fuck down.
Yeah, he's just like, if I'll kill you. If you're harboring him, he will be killed on sight. If you helping him in any way, like, you will feel the full extent of this law.
Yeah, and he has this pretty cool robe thing going and a little bit of face paint,
right,
just for public appearances, I guess. But like, it's subtle, like it's simple, but it's pretty cool, I think.
I like it. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so then all the soldiers are, all of these metallic, they're not just robots, right? They're
like cyborgs.
They're cyborg, sort of deals. Start on the ground level, enforcing it and spraying people down with pressure hoses and like
Right.
just all sorts of random shit, like as if this order had been long standing and people were just choosing to ignore it.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, there was no like...
They just go full bore. They're like, what are you still doing here?
There was no like ushering them back or anything. They're just like, oh, martial law?
Fuck you!
Hoses.
So funny.
Immediately.
But yeah, and then we flash into another conversation between Michelangelo and his dead brothers. And it's like, I mean, obviously very poignant that the first panel on the page where they're doing this conversation, he's got the journal open to the no peace page.
Right.
And so it's, you know, he's sitting there the four of them are sitting there talking about Casey and her moves and how smart she is and tough. And let's see, it makes it hard to tell who's saying what, just because, you know, the other three are dark and so all of their bandanas are just black.
Right.
But they're also talking about how young she is and already thinking about, you know, trying to take on the Foot Clan. And then we've also got one of them who just out of nowhere goes, and she ain't a mutant, she's just a kid.
Right.
But then they're not so sure about that.
Right. Like, it's just like, well, we were just kids.
Yeah.
You know?
And then, of course, Casey walks in. You talking to yourself?
Yeah.
And, you know, so, of course, like, I mean, he's not going to just... Granted, this is family, but, you know, technically... But, like, he's just barely met Casey. I mean, he's not even telling April about this.
Right.
You know, so he's sure as shit not going to tell Casey.
Right.
That, like, he's, you know, still dealing with this trauma and seeing his dead brothers.
Right. Yeah, so it's a pretty heavy thing to lay on somebody.
Yeah, so he just kind of blows it off. And then, you know, Casey's going to go topside to check with her crew. And she tells Mikey that April wants to talk to him. It's kind of nice. I like how they initially subtly lay this on about, you know, just be careful. And then she says, I'll keep working on my skills. I'll keep training my skills and everything. Because that comes into play later. But, so, you know, Casey says she's going to get going. And, you know, Mikey's sitting there thinking to himself, you know, the same type of shit that when the Turtles were kids, that they wouldn't have, you know, paid any attention to. Like, oh, kid thinks she knows everything.
Right.
She's way too damn young to be that old, you know, like have these experiences. And like, they went through the exact same. And so then in the next panel, he goes, same as it ever was. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he kind of acknowledges that, which is great. But yeah, it was just kind of an interesting little exchange with himself. Because, like, at that point, you know, anytime somebody interrupts these visions of his brothers, they're gone. Yeah. And so it doesn't come back again until later. So, like, this is straight up just him talking to himself. Yep. But, so that's great. He walks into the lab, and there he sees the Fugitoid. And he's like, the fuck?
Yeah, he's like, wait.
What, the Fugitoid? Yeah. And, you know, all it is left, of course, is his head, like we had said earlier. Poor Mikey, I mean, because it's the same thing with Casey. Like, when April just said, Casey, breakfast, and then all of a sudden, Fugitoid's head is right there. And poor Mikey's like, holy, what the fuck?
He's like, what is going on?
Gotta stop doing this to me.
Like, why don't you get rid of anything?
Yeah, and you know, this makes sense, but April's like, sorry, I wanted to ease you back into stuff, but like, shit's real, so
yeah, like we kind of
we don't have time for all that.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So, yeah, the next panel is a really cool full page panel, with, you know, aged April and aged Michelangelo and, you know, poor Honeycutt's head.
Right. They're just letting him hang out.
But yeah, no, that's when Mikey says, all right, like, let's talk. We need to figure shit out. Like, you need to tell me everything, and we need to figure out where things are. So the next panel is basically Honeycutt and the boys sort of, directing everybody in New York to be ready just in case, they are ambushed or
just anything
double
pops off.
crossed, whatever. And so in the meantime, so Honeycutt is saying, hey, like, we can't be in an aggressive posture because we don't want them to know that we think something's up.
Right.
Like, we don't want to put them on the defensive before we're ready or before anything actually happens, because we don't really know. And then in the meantime, Splinter is saying, hey, Oroku has also lost a ton, and, he's lost as much as we have. So maybe this is legit. Let's go find out. So he and Donatello peace out to go, to these peace talks in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as they blast off, it cuts to a couple panels of Baxter Stockman saying, ready the strike team. No more hiding behind your little mutant friends, Honeycutt. So, I mean, we now we all know that it's a whole thing. They're fucking them up.
Yep.
Their peace talks are bullshit.
It's about to go down.
It's about to pop off. So in the next panel, we cut to somebody basically checking in, saying, hey, we need eyes, yada, yada, yada. I think these are public work trucks, but I'm not seeing any workers. So, he's pretty shifty of things. And then the next panel sort of cuts to Stockman talking to Captain Lee, saying to begin when ready, and remember the robot must remain intact. So he's trying to get Honeycutt.
Right. He's going after the Fujitoid. He knows that the Fujitoid can pretty much, level his whole operation.
Well, and I'm sure he wants him for his own purposes on top of that.
Right.
But yeah, no, so meanwhile the rebels, I guess, if you want to call them that.
Right.
Are trying to get some drones up top, and they want to make sure that they've got eyes on everything and they're covered, and they are immediately killed. Unceremoniously slaughtered. So I guess they didn't get the eyes they needed.
Right. And then, move on to the next page, and they're like, okay, heads up, we've got movement. And those people are unceremoniously killed.
Yeah. So, again, Stockman's yelling at Captain Lee to get the Fujitoid, and he's sending out more robots to help them, because, I mean, they're taking out pretty much everyone, but he's still, like, yelling at them. I mean, I guess it makes sense, because, these guys are more well-trained, so even though they're getting their asses kicked, they're still taking out a lot of people. So he says, I'm sending in some prototypes to help you, clumsy fools.
Right.
So anyway, we cut to Leonardo asking a soldier what's going on, and he tells him there was an alarm coming from the sewer defenses. And we've got ninja coming at us from everywhere. Leonardo's like, how the hell did they find us? And of course they can't spend much time on that, because now they've got to like hurry and figure.
They've got to move.
Yeah. So they try to lock things down, and he's trying to get what Casey's location is. They're in the hangar, and Honeycutt's there. The Fujitoid is there with them, and they're finishing up whatever it is they're doing and trying to head over to meet them in the lair. Meanwhile, there's a giant explosion right as they're leaving, and Mikey is there with them. So this giant explosion seems to just really separate them, and they're trying to figure out what to do.
Foot are dropping from, like, ceilings, and everybody's just kind of scrambling out now because it was definitely an ambush.
Yeah, and they've got people coming through all the bay doors, the rooftop access. So they're like, "Are we going underground?" And then they say no, or well, Leonardo says no. Sewer levels are also breached. Pull back to the main compound, get as many as you can into the safe room. So like they are just getting fucked from all angles.
Right. They were just like, all right, well, I guess plan B somehow.
Yeah, like plan D, because everything is getting fucked. And then the final panel on that page is even more foot coming in from the ceiling. And then we cut to Leonardo being like, "So, how about that backup?
Yeah, hey Casey.
You said you were gonna be here, and you're not." So then it cuts to Mikey and Casey and a few others, basically trying to figure. I mean, they're just sort of standing there talking and going, "Well, yeah, the Foot are liars. We knew it. We fucking knew it."
Yeah, it was all a fucking joke.
And then Casey says, "Get my wife and Honeycutt to safety. Then we'll see, what these wimps got." And so it's just fighting and trying to figure things out. And of course they already recognize that. I mean, I'm sure partially because of the tech being used, they know it's Stockman.
Right.
And Honeycutt says he's found a way to track me. So that's how all of those access points were being overrun.
Right, because they had like a full schematic and
Yeah, they
were just
knew where
tracking
they were.
Honeycutt.
So they try sending people topside, and then this dude comes blasting through a wall. Looks a little bit kind of like an earlier version of that guard that was in the tower.
Right.
And then Leonardo's like, "Man, those things can't be human." And he and Casey are just there by themselves. And Casey being Casey.
he and it's cool because he does the line from the movie, the live action movie. He's like, what does he say? He's just like,
the class is Pain 101 and your instructor is...
Yeah, and he just like flies out.
But then he says, "Gungala, Gungala," for some reason. I don't know what that is. But yeah, and then they find Honeycutt. And unfortunately for them, Michelangelo finds them. So
right.
tears the dude's head off, and I feel like it must have been that dude's head, but
this big explosion happens.
This giant explosion happens right after Michelangelo puts, what is that, a staff? It looks like a staff.
I think it's his nunchuck. Oh,
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you can't really tell. It does look like a staff, but it's.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he puts this thing through his head and rips his head clean off. And so I'm assuming the explosive was, some sort of, not self-destruct, but, something similar to that. And Baxter Stockman gets pissed and sends out the Mousers.
The Mousers.
Which, at this point, they're already flying.
Yeah.
Mousers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, which is interesting because earlier when he was in the tower, he was like, "Flying Mousers?"
Right.
So, I mean, maybe he didn't encounter them at this time, but they were already existing. So, Casey does another movie style thing.
Right.
Hockey ain't your thing, huh? Let's try cricket instead.
Yeah.
It's not the exact quote, of course, but very, very movie.
Yeah. Cricket?
But yeah, so Casey's over there fucking things up. Michelangelo's over there fucking things up. And basically, while this is all going on, they're just trying to figure out, A, how to hold off the enemy, and B, how to get Honeycutt to safety, where he's not going to be stolen.
Right.
Kidnapped, I guess. Now, at this point, you cut to the next page, and it's just a sky full of mousers.
Just a whole swarm cloud of them.
Yeah, and Casey and Leonardo are standing there just saying, you guys go, Mikey. We got this. We'll take care of this. And Honeycutt, instead of staying in safety, tries to run out and help him. And they've got a really cool panel. So I really like the layout of this page because it's a full page panel with a couple panels, like small panels at the top overlaid on top of it, and even overlaid on top of each other.
Right.
Which is just really cool. Anyway, at the bottom of the panel, you see Leonardo and Casey Jones fucking shit up and talking about pizza toppings.
Yeah, there's just
in classic turtle fashion.
Right. Casey's like, it's your turn to buy the pizza, and Leonardo's like, yeah, but it's my turn to pick the toppings, and it's going to be like ham, pineapple, and jalapeno.
Yeah. And then Casey Jones is like, you're disgusting.
Yeah. It's like, what is wrong with you?
So Honeycutt at this point is like, yo, Stockman, I know this is you. I'm going to self-destruct before I let you hurt my friends or imprison me again. And then he goes full on Gandalf.
And he's like, you shall not pass.
And then Honeycutt's like, very well, if I can't have you, nobody will. And he sends all of these, it's just a sea of these sort of spider bots.
Yeah, they're like spider mousers almost.
Yeah. And then just a full page of explosion.
I love the
and this is like the explosion is just coming out of the entire block where the antique shop is.
Yeah, like, I mean, fire coming out of the windows and the door, and it just like the entire place is gone to shit. And that's where we see the last panel, which is probably one of the coolest ones.
It is
like,
so amazing.
It is like a full page. Casey's mask is hanging from debris, and Leonardo's katana is stuck in something, pretty much indicating that they're dead.
Yeah. And then, of course, the classic Bleecker Street sign.
Yeah, just like off to the side, just in view.
Yeah, it's such a sick panel. And then you've got, people in the subway going, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, like, what is happening?
And, at the same time, so, like, they're all trying to get out of the way. And so we show Casey Marie coming out of the subway and just going, what the hell is going on? Because people are running everywhere. There's just chaos. And she's informed that martial law has been declared, full crackdown. And the problem for them with that is, like, at least with these rebels, is that could ruin the entire resistance because they won't be able to communicate. They won't be able to get together, plan things, etc. So like, fuck, how's this going to work? And then Casey's basically like, all right, everybody get underground. We need to get the fuck out of here. And so they're scrambling, trying to get away. I mean, it's just, again, to utter chaos.
Right.
And so they're talking about splitting up, using the tunnels, covering more ground. Like, it's just everywhere, all over the place. And then Casey says that they'll use the old telecom lines to contact people when everybody's secure and try and, meet back up, figure things out. And then we've got, this is the only sort of awkward panel for me. Or this one right here, Eddie.
Right.
It's an image of Casey running through the sewer, but the way she's positioned, the way she's running is
Yeah, it looks kind of weird.
It's very awkward. Like, it's stiff, and the perspective is weird. I don't know. But that's the only image in this entire series that I was like, ew, what?
Yeah.
But anyway, so Casey's running around, trying to get to the lair to warn April about the shutdown, or not the shutdown, the martial law crackdown and everything. And then she has to actually hop out of the sewer herself, even though she told everybody to get in the sewers.
Right.
And immediately is met with a soldier. But then she takes him out, and saves this little old woman who is actually who the soldier was after originally. And then more show up, and she's able to take them out. So, I mean, again, it just shows how ineffectual these foot soldiers are.
Right.
Because, I mean, she's okay, but she's not really trained well at all. She's just sort of picked things up or tried to figure things out on her own. But yeah, so again, they suck.
which is what happens with
yeah. I mean, that's how they've always been. So she's out there kicking ass, doing her thing, and basically just running around trying to get her people together. And we cut back to the lair with Mikey and April. And she's taking his blood. She's drawing his blood, and he's being a little bitch about it.
He's like, I just don't like needles. And she's like, I just need a couple more vials. You know, and he's just like, oh, God, like, will I have any blood left?
Even to the point that he's like, will I even have any blood left?
She's like, shut up, you're being a bitch.
Yeah. And then, so the next panel, though, includes Honeycutt in there, and Mikey's asking about if he's even still operable, if he's still in there, if he's still alive, really, in whatever capacity that might be. And April's not sure, but she said, like, even at this point, April is now saying, I'm pretty sure that's how he found us last time, how Stockman found us last time.
Right.
Was by hacking the security firewalls Fugitoid had developed to keep us hidden during the war. And so she doesn't want to reactivate him right now. Which, I don't know, to me, like, as soon as any of them realize that turtles are still around in any capacity. Right. I feel like that would be the first place they would check.
Right.
So, I don't know. But, whatever. And then Mikey goes, hey, April, after the explosion, how
did you survive?
How did you end up here? How did you survive? And so she goes into that, and we cut back to a nice, and this is another thing I like the really old flashbacks are in this cool little grainy gray,
almost like scroll, like papyrus type.
Yeah. So anyway, she talks about how she woke up to find out that everybody was gone. She lost her leg and her arm. And surprise, I was pregnant.
Right.
So she was in the hospital for a while, had lots of therapy. And then meanwhile, while she was laid up in the hospital, Hiroto and the Foot were taking control of New York. So now is where we sort of get a little bit of history on how that came to be.
Right.
So what's going on is the city was completing a wall around it to protect it from the rising water levels. And law enforcement is finding itself embroiled in just this all-out war against organized crime gangs on the inside of the city. So when she finally got out of the hospital, she had a new metal arm and leg, and then a new baby as well. So, I mean, she was in the hospital for like almost
months.
A year.
Yeah.
You know? Well, I mean, maybe not almost a year, because she was already, when she was doing the physical therapy, she was already in the panel they showed that she was already quite far along pregnancy wise. But yeah, and she just said things were getting so bad in the city that she went ahead and like immediately moved down to the lair.
Right. With the store all.
Yeah, there was really nowhere else for her to go, let alone that would be safe topside. So then we cut back to her finishing up, giving him a Band-Aid. I'm kind of surprised. I'm a little bit saddened that she didn't give him like a lollipop.
Right, because she joked about it.
Yeah, she did. She did. But anyway, so then he asks how she got the Fugitoid's head, and she said that some of Leo and Casey's strike team were still around and that they were the ones who had recovered it. And he asked where they were now, but she said that most of them died trying to fight Hiroto's forces when he took over.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are left are still part of the resistance and, you know, still fighting the Foot and Hiroto. And then she says that Casey Marie told her about what Mikey had told Casey Marie about him training in Asia and Europe and things like that during that time that he had been gone. And then she said that basically how, like, she wanted to know how he got over there. And so he said the last thing that he remembered clearly was trying to get April and the Fugitoid to safety. And then we cut to a nice, cool another cool flashback in the grays and everything. So basically, and I really like it's really well interspersed.
Right.
Them doing these cutbacks.
Yeah.
And flashbacks.
Agreed.
But anyway, so he basically says he was knocked the fuck out from the explosion and was thrown halfway across the neighborhood. And then when he came to, the store was gone and he figured everyone was dead. So he was just in this major haze for a while. I mean, I'm sure he was like fully concussed and didn't really know what was going on.
Exactly, yeah.
He tried calling Donnie to warn him and Splinter, but he couldn't get through to him. And so all he could think to do was to try and go find them and save them. So he grabbed some weapons and shit and stowed away on a plane to Japan. And did what he could to try and reach him in time. And this is really cool. The next panels, when they come back to present time, are kind of going into survivor's guilt and, you know, how that's affected him. And I thought that was really cool.
That is very cool. Like, just kind of that little inclusion of April being like, well, I went to therapy for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, and what you're going through seems to be survivor's guilt, which is what, like, I'm going through as well. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just really cool to me that, you know, because people love sort of, just making offhand remarks about how, oh, well, comics are just kids' things. They don't do anything for you. They're just dumb and
right. Like you're like, it's almost infantile to read like comic books.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got stuff like this.
Right.
You've got, and yes, this is a newer story, but then you've also got stuff like X-Men.
Right.
It's all about inclusion and, you know, like this is the way it's always been, is putting a spotlight through this medium on social issues. And like, I think that's really, really cool. And to be so dismissive of stuff like that, I mean, is fine, but don't pretend like you know anything about it.
Right.
If you're going to be that dismissive
exactly.
about it. But anyway, this PSA brought to you by
the Nerd Corp.
Yeah. So April then says, hey, guess what? I think I know how to beat Hiroto. And so all of a sudden Casey has apparently, you know, been skulking around in the background. She's like, okay, cool. Tell us.
Let us know.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And she says, by the way, all hell's breaking loose. in Rock Bottom. So she's finally gotten to her mom and let her know what's going on outside.
Yep.
Now we cut to Hiroto.
It was just like perched on a beam. He looks like I'm Batman. He looks like Azrael.
Yeah.
From Batman.
Yeah, like he's decided that he is way too cool for school. And he is hardcore parkour. So yeah, he's and he literally starts saying all this shit about I am the one, I am God.
Yeah, made in his flesh, and you mother, you left me to be this, and you know, there's nobody else like me that could do it.
And like all of the citizens of New York are spoiled, entitled children, and I've been far too indulgent. So yeah, he's got a little bit. I mean, not only does he have a God complex, he literally goes so far as to say, I am God made flesh.
Yeah.
I am their God incarnate. So he's going full tilt.
He's going through it. He's going through it.
Which is kind of cool too, because I mean, he has his mom encased in this thing. And originally I was like, oh yeah, well, I mean, he's sad about his mom and yada, and that's not the case. He's not a fan. He's not a fan of his mom, apparently.
Yeah.
Which we only find out here. But yeah, let's see. In fact, is it here that he says? I mean, he basically, like, not only is he not a fan of his mom, but he says, and you, Orokusaki, grandfather, Shredder, you see me now, don't you? I am all you aspired to be and more.
Yeah,
your heir, you're better.
Yeah.
Like, this motherfucker is...
He's got the balls to say he's better than the Shredder.
Like, come on.
But I love that. This is very heel monologue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is supposed to give you that reaction. You know what I mean? Like, all right, buddy, like, you know, you're going to get your ass kicked, you know, like it's doing its job at making you hate him.
Yeah. And, you know, at this point, I mean, he's definitely doing some hardcore parkour, running around, jumping on things,
monologuing as he does.
Yeah. And he says, I will rise to our greatest triumph. Ha ha. That's literally there. I didn't back. But yeah, so he's going a little crazy.
Yeah,
he's going a
little off his rocker.
He's a little bit tilted. But yeah, and so he's like, I will never again be forgotten, abandoned. So he is, I mean, this is obviously, that bit is in relation to his mom.
Right.
And so that's when I was like, oh shit.
Yep.
So yeah, then he says, I am God, immortal. My angels will not allow it, him dying. Mm-hmm. And he jumps off of a building. He's already jumped off of a building and is falling to prove this. And then, of course, these giant mechanical hands come and grab him. Like, so I don't know if you'd call that angels or shit that you built specifically for that fucking purpose.
Right. Like, he knew.
But, you know.
Like, he knows. My angels won't allow it. You mean your big giant mechanical hand that's on the side of this building?
That you had built for just in case? But, you know, I digress. So we skip back to Mikey. And they've already discussed the plan. They did not let us in on it, the bastards.
Right. And he's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if we can do this.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're laying down. But it's a long shot. And so April's like, I mean, it's the only choice we have. It's the only thing that could work. And, you know, Mikey's like, look, there are way too many variables. There's way too much shit that we can't control. But pretty much he then sums it up and says, Baxter Stockman's got his own headquarters, fortress, and we need to attack it, shut him down before we can take out Hiroto. So they, like, if they don't take him out, he's got all of these defenses that are they're just, he's got too much. It's just going to overwhelm them before they even can get to Hiroto. And so then they need to try and activate Honeycutt during the attack and hope that he is functional. And if he is, then that'll help them hopefully knock out Baxter's tech, and then they can try taking out Hiroto. So, he's like, I don't like it.
No.
I don't like it.
No, I don't think we should.
This is not a great plan. And Casey Marie's like, too fucking bad.
Yeah. Like I told you before, I'm not asking your permission.
Like, we're gonna do it whether you like it or not. And they're just bickering back and forth, and April yells at him.
Right.
So yeah, and then she takes Mikey aside, saying that there's something else he needs to see. And he's like, all right, fine, but I won't change my mind. And then she takes him into this room where there is a giant armored vehicular.
Yeah, it's like a turtle tumbler.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, I've been prepping for a long time, getting ready for one last fight for our freedom, waiting for the right moment that we could strike most effectively. I've been planning and I've been building, and I think Donnie would approve, don't you? And because like in the previous panel where he sees it initially, it's in a back corner, like it's in its own little thing. So you don't really see anything but the front of it. So you can't really see the scope of it. Now we get a panel of the whole thing, and it's fucking huge.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
Yeah.
And that's the end of book 3. This was probably one of my favorites, like of course, apart from the ending, but this was like one of my favorite books because we got to see the scope of what Hiroto is.
Yeah.
We got to see Oroko Hiroto's power. Pretty much, like even back then.
See, it's one of my favorite too, but more for the fact that we finally have the scope of the full
of what
history.
Yeah, what happened to everyone.
What's occurred, what Mikey was doing during the time that he was gone, what was happening in New York during the time he was gone. Like we get the full scope of sort of what's been going on.
Right. And so we head over to book 4, and it's just like a full page panel of
which
them.
is one of my favorites.
Yeah, they have this. They're like at this whole out assault, and April, this is Mike. Are you in position? And there's like static happening. April, come in. Damn it! I told you guys this was a bad idea, and
which I'm sure is just like because so they're on Baxter Stockman's island,
mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm sure he's got some tech that knocks out or interferes with communications, other people's communication.
Right. So, it's Mikey, and he's like in some armored suit with a hood on.
Just dope.
Casey Marie's got this like black and purple like tactical suit with like a domino mask.
She's a little Nightwing-y.
What this reminds me of a lot more is Domino.
Yeah.
From what is it? X-Force.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but yeah, I can totally see the like Nightwing, because she does. She even has like these like bladed weapons, and it's super dope. He's like, no, I'm gonna, so they're pinned down. They really can't wait for April right now. So he's like, I'm gonna go find another way in. Lay down suppressive fire, wait for my signal, and it goes to the 2-page.
Yeah, this is a 2-page panel, right?
Yeah, the 2-page full panel of
the title page, yeah,
and which looks so dope.
I know, like this is actually more. I think this is my favorite. Like I love that other one. But out of the two, like this one's even more badass.
And part 4, Blood in the Snow. And so, in the title, he's like, drop some smoke, lots of smoke. And Casey's like, but, I don't know. And he's like, no, Casey. And she says, yes, sensei. So it gives us that notion that that he's taken her on as a student, and so they're throwing down suppressive fire, and it goes into Mikey's inner monologue, like, we're too pinned down, we got to find a way in, or we're gonna die in this beach, like, stupid plan, and he's mowing through security.
Yeah,
and
dude.
And we go into the next panel, which is Baxter Stockman, but he's all like burnt up, like all
teched out, like he's got all this tech on him, keeping him alive and shit.
It's almost like a cyborg Deadpool thing he's got going on. And Mikey gets up and he sees another robot, but it's like huge. It's got like 4 legs and like this giant blade and this giant like clasp, prepared to be eliminated. He takes it out with ease, and it grabs him. Like he like stabs it in what looks like its center console, and it grabs him, and he's like, well, I'm fucked. And Casey comes in to save the day, and he's like, I thought I told you to stay put. And he's like, well, you did, but I didn't. Terrible discipline, excellent initiative, don't do it again. And she's like, yes, sensei. And the next panel is, her hitting the bag, and he's like, her technique is decent.
She's got WAP.
It says BAP. She's like, her technique is decent, but she's developed some bad habits. And it cuts to the next panel of him talking to his, hallucination of his brothers. And he'd be like, it'd be interesting to see what she could do with like 10 years of real training. And he's like, yeah, except we don't got 10 years. But, like, I wonder why she cut her hair. And he's like, I don't know about her hair, Don, but if she keeps, if she's going to be fighting regardless, it's time we find out what she's willing to learn, and she's huffing. She's like gone through it, and he's like, well, besides getting your cardio in, that was just about useless.
I love that.
Yeah. And, she's like, whoa, I didn't even hear you come in. He goes, sneaky ninja, remember, if you ever fight you ever fight anyone skilled with that garbage? And she's like, yeah, I got skills. And he's like, all right, whatever. Like, show me you got skills. Hit me as hard as you can. And she's like, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, figures. Nothing but a child pretending to be a warrior. And, and so he got her under her skin, and she like tries to get her drop on him, but she's like, she goes, hi, like she does a key eye. She's like, hi. And he's like, it's a good thing you yelled first, or you might have completely caught me off guard. And so, it's she's trying to hit him, and he's like dodging her effortlessly. And he's just like, legs are weak, slow, but not as slow as your fist, which allowed me all the time in the world to do that. And he flips her over, and she's like huffing, and she's like, yeah, right. And he's like, I wouldn't get up if I were you. And she gets up, and he's like, you were warned. And she learned a little, and he's like, oh, looks like we got a plan. And she's like still trying to fight him. She gives him that like double palm push, and he's while she kicks him first, and he's like, white belt quality kick. And she's like pushes him, and he's like, she does that like double palm push, and he's like, okay, maybe yellow belt. Like he's just giving her like all of this shit, teaching her what was up. Pushes her up against the wall, and he's like, take it easy on the bricks, they're pretty old. And she finally gives up, and she's like, I give up. She was like, okay, I give. And he's like, that's not the point, to give up. Even the greatest of warriors can't punch their way out of every confrontation. Sometimes it pays to be subtle, fluid, elusive. Avoiding strikes rather than giving. And pretty much just telling her, like, you can, if you can tire your opponent out, like it'll be better, And he's like, look, the point is, I don't know you and you don't know me, but we're practically family, and you kind of need a teacher, But if I'm gonna teach you, you got to do what I say when I say it. I tell you what to do when you do it. And she's like, oh, for real? Like a teacher? He's like, it's sensei. She gives him like this big hug, like a big like niece uncle hug, and he's like taken aback, not knowing what to do about it. And she's like, thank you, Michael, sensei. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Now, get a haircut. She's like, "Hi, haircut, good one."
Yeah, because he doesn't know how to be a sensei. Like,
Yeah, he doesn't know how to teach anybody.
yeah, so he's just like fumbling his way through.
Yeah, he's like, "Now, go get a haircut or something." And April was listening long
Goddamn
enough,
hippie.
right? And April was behind him, and he's like, "Oh shit! Like, how long have you been back there?" And she's like, "Long enough. Like, I'm glad that you have this. Like, I'm glad that she can connect with you in this way. Splinter was there for all of his sons, all of us, everyone he thought of as family until the very end. And he's like, and speaking of Splinter, you never finished telling me what happened to Japan. I need to know." And so it goes into this. It goes into one of those flashback deals, and it's pretty much just him walking and not finding anybody, and snow was blinding, but after a while I was pretty sure I was completely lost and ready to give up, and he saw lights in the distance, and it ended up being that camp, the Hamato camp. And the village turned out to be a massive compound. One of the elders was there and was waiting for me. I quickly told him who I was and why I was there, and he just stared at me with sad eyes for what seemed like forever before he finally spoke. And so he lets him know that he is Master Shinichiro of Clan Hamato. And, follow me, we'll talk further inside. And he's like, "I've abandoned all idea of what the etiquette is for this. I can't really, I'm just desperate." And he's like, "I need to know what happened to my father and my brother. Where are they, please?" And the elder responds, "There are people, creatures, teachers, warriors, heroes, and legends. And your father, Master Splinter, was all of these." And so it cuts back to not to the past, where Splinter and Donatello arrive, and they're, it's good to see you. They're having their pleasantries, and Splinter's just like, there's no place in the earth with air as sweet as this, and so they're just basically talking about how, like, hey, like, are we sure we want to go through with this? Is this one of the things that we want to do? Like, I don't trust them. I hope Oroku Hiroto chose this location out of ignorance and not malice. And it's this like giant field of like graves, right, pretty much. When they get to the base of it, because it's like this like basin, almost like this little bowl of graves, like a sinking graveyard, almost what it looks like. They're like, "Greetings and welcome. I'm an ambassador for the Foot Clan." And he's like, "Oh, I thought Master Hiroto was going to be here." And he's just like, "Yeah, he's just preparing the feast that we're all going to enjoy after this." And
yeah, so he didn't even show up.
Yeah, like he didn't even get there or whatever, and he wasn't even there. And he's like, "But I noticed you're all armed. Like, that was one of our conditions of the gathering, to celebrate with no weapons." And Splinter's like, "I don't recall agreeing to that, but these are merely ceremonial decorations, if you will." Like, he's just kind of like talking him off. He's like, "Regardless, we'll stand over here until your master arrives. When we conclude our then we will conclude our business." He's like, "No, let's finalize the terms now before Hiroto arrives. After all, we're all here for the same reason." And Splinter like holds his ground. He's like, "No, we're gonna wait. Like, we're gonna chill out here, and we're gonna wait." And he's like, "No, we're humble servants of our master. We only seek peace." And Splinter's like, "We are, like, that's what we do. This war has lasted generations. A few more minutes won't matter." And so you see Hiroto in this like crazy like samurai armored outfit, and he's like, "So the prodigal mutant returns. Welcome home, rat," which is what Orokusaki Shredder used to call him too.
Well, and what I don't understand is why his servant looked so terrified that they wouldn't conclude the business, quote unquote.
Right.
Because like it had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Like, why would you conclude the business if the business was to ambush you and kill you? But, you know.
Whatever.
Yeah. And so he's like, welcome home, rat, or should I call you, or should I say pitiful, deluded fool? You know, how easy it was to get you here, only for you to learn you wasted your life and that of your disgusting mutant spawn on a thread of false hope. Tell me, rodent, have you heard anything from your family in New York? You know, and Splinter just chops the head off of like 3 of his homies and is just like,
I love that.
He's like, oh, Roku Hiroto, while you still breathe, you will call me Master Splinter. And, you know, he's like, I'll, like, in very few words, he's like, I'll fucking see you in hell, attack! And so, like, all these Foot Clan members start popping up from the snow and in the graves, and, you know, and, Donnie's like, we should have never trusted him. Another Oroku liar. And Shredder's like, I wouldn't have brought a weapon if I trusted him. And they just start fucking hacking through these dudes.
These are some really great fight scenes. They're small panels. Like they're long, thin panels, but they are so fucking dope. I mean, Splinter just slicing through dudes and jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking sick.
It's really cool because it shows like that Splinter's still got that step in him, you know what I mean? Like, and Donnie's like, these guys are seriously lacking discipline, and Splinter's like, not numbers though. And the Elder's like, yeah, he's right, don't let your guard down. And so they're slashing through, you know, keep pressing forward, my son. Skill will decide the outcome today. You know, and they end up, I think they end up killing Master Shinichiro and, you know, leave him, go get the others. They bring out archers and, you know, Hiroto's like, hear me, rats. Heed the last words you'll ever hear. Your time is through, as is your family's in New York City and here on this battlefield. Everyone you have known and loved is gone, all dead. And Splinter's like, then I have nothing left to lose. Come, boy, face me like a true warrior. Come meet your fate at my blade like your grandfather before you. Like, just fucking trying to get him.
And then he's busting out some archers.
Yeah, and so he brings out the archers.
Bitch.
Right? And he's like, no, you will not escape my sword, you treacherous coward. And Donnie's like, Father, no. And the archers let loose, I think. And, you know, they get hit. But right before the archers hit, Splinter throws his sword and hits him in the shoulder, and that's when Shinichiro's like, or not Shinichiro, but another general is just like, Clan Hamato, rain hell, and they throw arrows back, and they're like, all right, we gotta go, we have to do this and everything, and you know, they retreat, and you see a bunch of the Hamato clan soldiers standing over Splinter and Donnie's bodies. Like, you don't see them, but you see Donnie's bow with an arrow with a couple of arrows through it. And the final panel there is like, there are people, creatures, teachers, warriors, heroes, and legends. Your father, Master Splinter, was all of these. You know, and so it goes back to one of those little grainy spots or whatever, and he's like, you know, as was your brother. And so they pretty much just like give him the book. That's where he gets the book, The Bloodied Bow Staff. And he's like, well, I couldn't stay there. I missed them too much. You know, it was just too much to handle. So I respectively declined their kind invitation, turned towards the mountains, and I just started walking. Talks about being the last of his kind, being a Ronin. He would just follow his father's journal. And he's like, had I known you were alive, it might have been different, but the mission would still be the same. I'm sorry. And she's like, don't apologize. There's no way you could have known. And the rest, I understand what needs to be done. And so in the next panel, he's like, you're here now. That's what counts. And the way Casey Marie is taken to you is, oh, no, that's April still. And she's like, you're here now. That's what counts. And the way Casey Marie is taken to you is so amazing to watch. It's like, I never thought she'd be able to connect with someone the way that she has with you. And he's like, you sure about that? It seems like our connection is by design. Your design. She goes, what are you saying? And he's like, when were you going to tell me that she has extra abilities? And why would you keep that from me? And she's like, I wasn't keeping that away from you exactly. And, she's like, I've run thousands of tests. And as far as I can tell, trace amounts of the mutant DNA were passed on from her birth parents, who happened to have nearly lifelong exposure to due to the company that they kept. And it's pretty much just saying, like, because of the fact that they were around them so much, they absorbed some of the mutant gene, and now Casey's a little stronger and she heals fast.
And just that they want to keep that between them for now.
Right. And so it goes back to the, before it goes to them, like, planning the beach, like, okay, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Not only does Stockman have his own fortress, it's on his own island. And they're just like planning and everything. And it cuts back at the bottom panel to them storming the beach, like Normandy style.
Storming the capital, as it were.
Right. Shit. And so something alerts, Baxter, there are a dozen life forms converging on the security wall. And he's like, annoying flies, nothing more than useless thugs. And
well, yeah, because at this point, he doesn't even know who it is that's attacking him. So, and I think it gets into it shortly, but I mean, he thinks it's just people there trying to steal shit.
Right. And it keeps going back and forth, like them arguing whether or not the plan will work, to them going back to the beach, pretty much calling audibles because the radio doesn't work.
Well, and they're starting to get overrun.
Right. They're starting to get, like...
And the gun towers are still up, and, like, those should have been knocked out already.
Right. And so we got the sensei. Everyone knows their objectives. Main doors are too heavily armored. Our second objective is 100 yards that way. Follow Casey and throw everything you have for covering fire.
It's great, too, because it like, with it going back and forth of, like, them talking about the plan to them being in the middle of the attack, like, it keeps saying, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to take out these gun towers. And then it goes to present time going, God, we're not getting these gun towers taken out. We need to get to these doors.
Right.
And then, like, them going, okay, so if we don't get the gun towers taken out, then we go to these secondary doors and try and make our way in there. And then it goes back to them on the attack going, we can't get to these doors. They're too heavily fortified. And so, like, everything that they're trying or that they had planned on is kind of getting stymied.
Yeah. And so they find a way in. Baxter Stockman releases this crazy ass, like, volley of Mausers, and someone's letting Hiroto know, we're receiving multiple reports of gunfire and explosion from Roosevelt Island. And it shows that Hiroto and Stockman don't have the best relationship. And he's like, crazy old Baxter, maybe he'll blow himself up this time, And
yeah, and so everybody's really just not only underestimating, but, like, not understanding what's going on to any degree. And so, like, Baxter's sending, getting his defenses up and everything to take care of the problem, but he doesn't think it's as big of a problem as it really is. So, and then, of course, Hiroto's just like, whatever, man. It's not my problem.
Yeah, fucking blow yourself up for all I give a shit.
Yeah, and they even talk about, like, well, what if Baxter calls in the Foot? like then we're fucked.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, he's not going to do that unless it's an absolute last resort because they don't have a great relationship. And then they display that with Hiroto going, fuck that bitch.
Yeah, like fucking blow yourself up. And so when it feels like all is lost and they're like, well, we're fucked, I guess, whatever. In comes April with the fucking turtle tumbler.
Yeah.
And she's like, sorry, I'm late. I got caught up in the river, like I was at the bottom of the river and the thing wouldn't move.
Yeah.
So
fucking thing sucks.
Yeah. And so April gets out. She EMPs the flying mousers. And she grabs Honeycutt's head and takes it over to this panel. And she's like, let's go, Professor Honeycutt. We've got a world to change. And we've only got one shot to do it. And so she shoves his head into this panel. In you go. Now lots of power. She takes these power cables and just like throws it.
Jams them in there.
And everything starts to get crazy. Come on, Professor, you've been in the dark too long. If you're going to they're going to kill us if you don't. And then this explosion happens. And, Stockman's throwing everything he has at us. Watch your backs. It's this giant,
Yeah, because now, as soon as she plugged Honeycutt in, he knew that he was there. And so now he finally understands the scope of what's going on in this attack. And he's like, oh, fuck.
Right. And so he runs over to the panel and he's like, what do you think you're doing? And she's like saving the world. But first, and she lays him out with her prosthetic hand. And, doesn't lay him out, but she knocks him one good. And he's like, damn woman, I barely felt that. And throws her off to the side. And he's like, I'll finish you all momentarily, but not until I secure my prize. And so he grabs the panel, and all you hear faintly is, you shall not pass. And he's like, what did you say? And he says, you shall not pass. And so he lights up, and Stockman's holding him, so he's getting electrocuted. And next to it's 2 tall panels and 4 small panels on the side of this page. And it goes to Mikey, and the panel is for my family. It goes to Casey Marie, and it says for my friends. It goes to April, and it says for everything. And it's just Baxter Stockman just getting dismantled.
Lit up. And then the next panel is so fucking sick.
Yeah,
it's just him basically disintegrating into nothingness.
And then after all of that explosion, it's like this little swarm of nanobots. And April's like, goodbye, Satan Honeycutt. Thank you. And so these nanobots are just going to work. And it's short-circuiting everything. All of the robot sentries on the next page start to just kind of short-circuit and get, all fucked up. And so Hiroto sees this, and he's just like, sound a full tactical alert. I want everyone and everything with a weapon in this tower now. And so there's looting, and people are fucking everything up.
Yeah, because all of the soldiers are shutting down too.
Yeah. And so he's like, I think we won. And, April's like, the battle, not the war. And Mikey's like, and not at a price I'm willing to pay anymore. And that is the end of book 4.
All right, so the final book, The Last Ronin, so part 5. So we start off with Mikey back at the lair, having a conversation with himself and his 4 dead brothers, basically going, okay, well, we just whooped the shit out of Baxter Stockman. What are we doing here?
Right, why don't we just go back and do it again?
We whooped his ass with a full frontal assault. Let's do a full frontal assault again. Why the fuck not? Don't fix what's not broken.
Right.
And Mikey's, I just kind of having a tough time with it. So he's fighting with the voices in his head. Basically, it's more just that he's having a tough time with all the loss. I mean, he's obviously not over it. He's never been over it.
Right.
And I think that type of battle is reminding him of all that he's lost because that's what happened last time,
Exactly.
And then even at the end of it, he says, too many innocents are getting hurt. So then we cut to, and we never talked about this. They do give a name to the cyborg sort of soldiers, Sinjas.
Right. That was the it was like a colloquial term that they had for him, right?
Yeah. So Sinjas are offline. People are looting and going absolutely crazy and burning shit down. And then the sewers start flooding, which is a problem for obvious reasons.
Right. That's where the lair is.
Yeah. And so then we cut over to Hiroto freaking out because nobody can reach Stockman. So Hiroto's freaking out, and all of their systems, all their shit, all their tech is like basically most of it is offline, except for a few things that weren't run through Stockman's system. So he's freaking out. He wants all of the soldiers on tactical alert. Like, we need to end this now. And then he asks for his armor to be brought to him because he's going to hunt and kill a mutant. But I love the panel on the end of this page where it's just got Michelangelo looking sort of in the direction of the tower with all of his brother's weapons on his back. And it's just fucking sick.
It's super dope.
It's such a cool... Like, I want that panel as a background. Like, it's just...
Right. It's such a cool panel.
Yeah. So, then we've got... I was going to say April. We've got Casey Marie running around to try and find April in the sewers because, like, holy shit, all this flooding. She doesn't know where her mom is. She finds Splinter's journal, and so, of course, she grabs that because that's, a huge deal for Mikey.
Right.
And she finds April, and April's letting her know, hey, like, the power system failures knocked out the water pumps, so thus all the flooding and everything. And so they're trying to fix that. During this whole thing is where Casey Marie basically is like, look, I know I'm different. I've known for a long time. I'm just like them, a mutant. So, I mean, she's not dumb. She knows that she's not right. Like,
right.
She knows that she doesn't get hurt like normal people get hurt.
Right. And there's this like dope ass panel where she like punches out a wall.
And that's why it comes up, of course, is because April is like, you're going to hurt yourself. Stop it. And she's like, will I? Will I though? Come on, Mom. We both know I'm fucked up. So then we switch back to the tower where shit is fucking going down.
Right. Explosions left and right, people falling from the ceiling.
And, so we've got Mikey just setting off bombs. He meant for them to be a little more subtle. They were not. It like blew up an entire level of the tower. And he's like, well, shit. He knows I'm here now because he was trying to be a little sneaky. And, Hiroto goes, so, mutant, there's another direct assault. And so, yeah, I mean, he's just balls to the wall. Like, and at this point, Hiroto is finally like, I mean, he's already gone after, had his armor brought to him and everything.
Right.
So now he's like, all right, yeah, let's go for this. Let's do this. And, he's got... It's just all of these really cool panels of Deadfoot soldiers in Michelangelo's wake.
Right, like in a stairway on one of the
like
floors,
hallways.
A hall. Like it's just like carnage fucking left behind by Michelangelo.
Yeah, and it's just fucking sick. And then he comes upon this final staircase that is going to get him into like his office area sort of deal. And there is just this enormous motherfucker.
Just a hulking man with like what I can only say is a buster sword.
Yeah, like, and decked out in like the craziest, like this dude is like armored the fuck up to the T.
It almost looks like terracotta armor.
Yeah. Like, he is just hardcore. And, so he throws out some flashbangs and, throws a concussion blast to open the door and everything. And he is just raining down on this giant fucking dude. And, I mean, he has a little bit of problem because the dude's fast. And so he goes in close to, avoid this giant sword of his. And then, just plows right through him.
Yep, just fucking sticks Leonardo's katana through his neck.
So then, here come the crows again. And, of course, we find out that the crows are robots.
Yeah. Yep. Just like everything else around him.
Yep. So, he takes out the robots. And that's when he whips out some new weapons.
Well, these are the electric town bow that he was using earlier. And that's what he uses for, like, the EMPs and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so he whips those guys out, and then it's just this panel of a hand that just knocks him for a fucking loop. And it's this... what would you even call this? I mean, it's this big-ass robot that has wings.
It's like a mechanical gargoyle almost.
Yeah. And so it's whooping his ass a little bit, actually. he refers to it as a tank with wings. I mean, it just kind of wails on him for a minute.
And it's like making all these screeching noises, screech.
Yeah. But he uses that ginormo buster sword from the other homeboy to just slice right through his midsection.
Yeah.
And so, takes him out nice and easy with that guy. And then we finally get to Hiroto. And it's kind of funny because at this point, I mean, he's talking about, hey, your bloodline fucking ends tonight, bitch.
Yeah, like it's over.
Like I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your mom. And then Hiroto's like, fuck my mom, and kills her himself.
Right. It's like, I never really liked her anyway.
Fuck that bitch. So, that's kind of, I actually like that a lot. It was just a nice little, we don't need any, need any lead up. Let's just, I'll kill her myself right now. Bump. Let's do this. And his suit is crazy.
Right. It's like,
it's very Tron-like.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, like a white version of the Lord Drakkar armor from Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
Like Tommy's Lord Drakkar, like.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a sick ass suit, and it's basically almost like a nanobot sort of thing where it heals him as he's injured. It covers up, spots where like he's had a sword run through him. Like it's intelligent armor.
Right.
So yeah, he basically says, all right, let us begin the end. And it's time to throw down. And man, that suit, when it's like fully realized, on the page where they actually begin fighting and go through the window, like that's a badass panel.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's almost Shredder-like.
Yeah.
Like it gives that Oroku.
It does. I mean, it's even got the spikes coming off the hands, the back of the hands.
Yep.
It's just a much more high-tech version, and it's just sick.
It's like if Shredder was the T-1000.
Yeah, totally. Like, that's what I thought the first time. I was like, oh, dude, this is giving me, like, T-1000 vibes. But, yeah, and so, he sits there and talks about how it's like liquid metal that he can manipulate, T-1000, like, straight up. And it's, like, some sort of nanocarbide. And then he's talking about how he's already starting to have trouble with fighting because of the fires that are all around them. He's breathing in the smoke. So he's already struggling a little bit. And that comes into play because he just struggles more and more. It gets harder and harder. And then they sort of get like blown out of the building by an explosion.
Right.
And then we cut to a couple panels where they're talking about how everybody in Rock Bottom is reporting the explosion in Hiroto Tower. And so at the same time, though, of course, they can't really concern themselves too much with that because they're trying to figure out the flooding situation. But it does show a quick panel of Casey Marie going, "Damn it, Sensei," obviously being concerned. Because she knows that's that motherfucker.
Right.
Like, she just
God
knows.
damn it. What did you get yourself into?
You son of a bitch. I mean, she's probably more mad that he didn't wait for her.
Right, right.
But yeah, so then it goes back to the fight itself. Oh yeah, in fact, she said, like, in the next panel, it's still her talking, saying, "Why didn't you wait for me?" So yeah, there you go. But yeah, so then it shows them basically falling down the outside of the building. Unfortunately for him, even though his mutation has advanced and everything and progressed, but Hiroto's got this basically exoskeleton
super suit.
So, where is my super suit? So I mean, he's definitely at an advantage as they're falling from the outside of the tower. And of course, Hiroto's not stopping. I mean, he's fighting him the whole way down, and Michelangelo can barely do anything to him with this armor. So meanwhile, as they're falling, of course, Michelangelo's trying to figure out what on earth he can do to damage him.
Right.
And then they crash through this glass ceiling sort of deal. And meanwhile, the whole entire tower is just fucking lit up, crumbling. Like it's going down. Like the whole tower is just demolished. And then comms are coming back online, and they still have no word from anybody, though. And then finally, we see the two of them, Michelangelo and Hiroto, have fallen out of the tower. They're no longer bouncing down the side of it. They're fully just free falling.
Right.
And then they crash into like sort of this water towery sort of thing that must be on top of a building.
Right.
Which is fortunate for Michelangelo, but unfortunately also fortunate for Hiroto. And at this point, Hiroto has a stab in his shoulder, but it immediately starts repairing. And then, of course, Michelangelo's talking shit, and
right,
and Hiroto goes after him while he's talking shit. And meanwhile, it cuts back to Casey Marie, and they're still trying to get the water pumps, the subsystem pumps back online. And so she tries to go underwater and figure out what's going on. And so she's trying to get back to her mom. And she's basically just like really wanting to be there with Mikey, but of course she's not going to leave her mom hanging.
Right.
And meanwhile, man, Hiroto is just not letting up on Mikey. Just constant. And Mikey's trying to keep his distance, striking at the right time, and he is just getting tired. Which, I'm sure is intentional, of course, but ironic based on what he was telling Casey Marie during their training. That you need to let your opponent tire themselves out, and meanwhile, he is getting wrecked and he is getting tired. And all of that falling has hurt him a lot. And Hiroto is just fucking him up.
Right.
So he's still trying to find a weak spot. And so he tosses a bomb in Hiroto's hand, like a flash grenade sort of deal in his hand to distract him long enough. And then he stuffs a sai right into his hand, into his other hand.
Because it was like one of those concussive grenades, so it pulled the exosuit back long enough for him to just kind of stab him in the hand.
Yeah, and then he's like, Really? Really? And then he just snaps the sai in half. And then there's a ginormo explosion in the tower, which distracts Hiroto long enough because he's like, oh man, my tower. My tower. I love my tower. And then, and meanwhile, I was going to say Raph. And meanwhile, Michelangelo grabs this, I don't know what it even is, but it's like a pole that he rips out of the ground and whops him right off the building. Just smacks him a good one.
Just knocks
his ass silly. We cut back to Casey Marie swimming through the sewer, like you do.
Like you do.
Like you do. And she finally happens upon April, who has a handy-dandy little breathing device.
She's just still trying to fix everything.
Yeah, she's just down there trying to fix shit. And it's just those two panels is all we get at this moment of them. And then it cuts back to Hiroto slamming into the ground. And Michelangelo is already on top of him, stabbing him straight through the chest.
Yep.
With the katana. I mean, his armor's starting to get fucked up now. I mean, you can see he's still got blood in his hand from the sai that he was so cocky about before. Oh, it's just a scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And the armor is peeled back where the katana is into his. Well, it looked like his chest, but I guess it's kind of more of his ab stomach area. Then, and this is one of my favorite little pieces. So the katana is like kind of sticking halfway out of him,
mm-hmm.
and Michelangelo goes, "Your fancy armor's busted." And then he says, "This one's courtesy of Leonardo," and straight up side kicks the katana like
right through him,
right deep to the fucking hilt into him. And he goes, "Fine, I yield. You win." And meanwhile, I mean, there are just explosions all over the place, and he goes and he tells Hiroto there is no win or lose today, only an end. And Hiroto bows before him, and then of course, you know, in classic
villain
in classic villain fashion, he is like, "Yeah, you're right," and then immediately jumps up and slices him through the side with his spikes that are on his hand, those shredder claws, and he yells, "This is an ending, mutant, yours!" And Michelangelo is so embarrassed.
Yeah, it's like the oldest trick in the book, and I fell for it.
He's so embarrassed. So he chucks what's left of Donatello's bow staff at it. Well, I guess he broke it.
Yeah, he breaks it off.
He breaks it in half and chucks a piece of it at his face, and then hops down into the sewer. And then we skip back again to April and Casey Marie, and they're sharing air while they're trying to fix the goddamn pumps. And meanwhile, Michelangelo is bandaging himself and then figuring out, because Hiroto's armor is damaged,
mm-hmm.
but it's still serving its functions. Like, it's still, you know,
reassembling itself and
sealing his wounds and things like that. And so shortly after, Hiroto jumps down into the sewer as well, and Michelangelo's right there to meet him with the nunchucks and just cracks him straight in the skull.
Yep. You can see the armor retreating from.
Yeah, it's like I said, it is busted up. It's still working to an extent, but it is busted the fuck up. And then we cut back to April, still trying to work on that shit. She's trying to get the pumps going still, and she's working on a piece of it. Rocks are falling all over the place from the explosions that are happening above ground, and one of them falls on Casey Marie. So she dives down to the bottom to help her. Meanwhile, we skip back to the fight again, and he's not doing a bad job, but Michelangelo is just
he's on his last leg.
yeah, he is just last fumes of gas, and right here is where the water is flushing away. So she does get the pumps going, and they start getting sucked through the sewer. So we cut to April, who has gotten Casey Marie out of the water, and everything's good there. Also, we find out at this point that, because, Casey Marie is still concerned about Michelangelo. We find out at this point that when April drew his blood, she also put a tracker in him.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're trying to go after him and figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, those two poor motherfuckers are flushed out of
the sewer
system. Hiroto goes, "Hey, you're not going to survive this, bitch." And Michelangelo in his head is like, he's right. This whole thing, is a one-way ticket, like he's been saying from the very fucking beginning.
But this time he says he's not taking this trip alone.
Yeah. And he's like, "I'm going to bury you here. This mud hole will be your grave." And yeah, he's absolutely rocking him. And he goes, "No, I'm God. I'm immortal." And is he shorting out? Is that what's happening?
I don't know if he's shorting out or if he's like...
Because there's like a bubble around Mikey, though.
It's like an electric bubble.
Yeah, there's some sort of electric field that covers them, and it just explodes. It just fucking annihilates them. And they're both just sort of laying there. I mean, Hiroto is like straight up face down
in the mud,
like dead. But look at them booty cheeks sticking out, though.
Right?
He's got some cake. And Mikey is very much worse for wear. And I mean, he for a moment he's up, and then he just falls down and winds up on his back. And right then is when Casey Marie jumps out of the sewer, finds him, and is there with him. And he's basically like, this is the end. Like, this was my destiny for my family. And Casey's like, "But I'm your family now." And he's like, "Yeah, well, your mom and you, my father's journal left it for you." And instead of "no peace," like it said before, now it says "no peace," KNOW, on that final page. Which
was a pretty cool, like, little extra thing there.
That was really cool. Like, that was really, really cool to me. And then April comes out in the fucking total tank, the fucking giant thing, and they're both just there mourning in the rain. And April says, "Goodbye, my sweet friend." And it's just Casey Marie lying on top of Michelangelo. And then the final panel is the heart monitor, where it's one strong beat, and then one medium beat, and a smaller beat, and a smaller beat, and then nothing.
Mikey, no.
Like, it's so fucking... Oh my god, dude. That was really hard. And then the next panel is that heart monitor still with no activity on it. And we go back to sort of these really bright yellowish panels. Like, sort of like a fond dying memory sort of thing. And it's back when the Turtles were definitely younger. They're all like very much smaller like they used to be. And it's just a really beautiful thing where they're trying to wake him up and go up for training, and hey, sleepyhead, get your lazy butt moving.
Yeah.
Last one out, it does the dishes for a week, and he's just being slow, and I wasn't ready, you guys cheated. And they're outside now, and then they meet up with Casey and Splinter, and they're basically talking about New York and just, hey, this place smells.
Yeah.
Just really like general light conversation. Like everything's fine. We're just having a normal conversation.
Just a regular
no
old
big
day.
deal. And then the final panel is just them saying, yeah, Splinter right before the final panel says, but New York does indeed have its own unique odor. And then Mikey says, yeah, it does. Smells like home. And they're all standing there, like all four turtles, Casey Jones, and then Splinter are all standing there side by side, and the end.
Yeah. And then it goes into the epilogue where Casey Marie is hitting the bag, and she's, it shows that she's a lot stronger now, and, she's patting herself on the back. Not too shabby, Casey. And she's just talking in her brain, wish you were here. See how far I've come, but, I'll keep training, I'll keep learning, I'll keep getting better, Sensei. I won't let you down. Goes over to the lab where April is, and she's like, how are your tests looking? And she's like, slight improvement. Lots more to get done, though. And she's like, well, what's new? So what are we eating today? And April's like, get what you want, kiddo. I'm not hungry. And she's like, I wasn't talking to you. She's like fiddling with an iPad sort of thing. And she's like, hey there. And it's this giant panel on this like desk area. There's this dome, and there are 4 turtles in the dome. And she says, hurry up and grow already. I've got so much cool stuff to teach you.
Yeah.
And it says to be continued. And that's it. That is the whole Ronin story, and if you stuck with us through all of that, we thank you. It was pretty lengthy, but it's such a cool story to learn about and experience.
Well, yeah, and when you had originally told me about it, Eddie, I was super stoked because I really wanted to read it, and so I was super excited that we were going to do this episode so that I could read through the story, because it was great. I mean, obviously, growing up in the time that we did, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has always been a very fond memory of mine. And so it was really cool to get to read the story, The Last Ronin, just because it was so in depth, and just the artistry, the story, it was all just so good.
Yeah, it was an amazing story, and I mean they have more now. They have the Last Ronin, the Lost Years, and so that'd be cool. That's going to be a cool read for us.
Mm-hmm.
So after all of this, we have our rating system. 5 stars, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. Derek, what do you give it?
I mean, I would give it 5 stars. Like, it was just,
I agree.
It was such a good experience, and it was so well done.
Absolutely well written, well drawn, well colored. Everything was just amazing, and it was, you can tell it was a beautiful labor of love. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is probably one of my favorite shortened series that I've read in a very long time. So 5 stars from the both of us. We highly recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, please go read it. If you haven't read it yet and you listen to this, you pretty much read the whole thing.
Yeah, basically.
But go read it, experience it.
I mean, we don't do it near as much justice as it deserves.
Agreed.
It's phenomenal. So read it regardless.
Go pick it up, enjoy it. Let us know what you think. But that concludes our episode. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can follow us on social media.
On Facebook, at the Nerd Corporation, a podcast.
On Twitter and Instagram, at NerdCorp Podcast.
By email at nerdcorppodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, just search the Nerd Corporation and look out for our green Nerd Corp logo. If you love us and want to support what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcore podcast. Several tiers of loot to have access to, from stickers and shirts to extra content and bonus episodes. We'd love to thank our Nerd Corporate backers, Glenn Simp, Fillmore McLaurin, and Jake Hurst, and our Nerd Financial investor, Dallin Gilbert. Thank you, Dallin. Thank you, Jake. And thank you, Fillmore. Bork. If you can't make a monthly contribution, consider supporting us on PayPal, paypal.me/nerdcore podcast. We want to have the best loot, give you the best giveaways, and give you the best nerdy experience, and that is the best way to do that. So, from all of us here and not here at the Nerd Corporation, we thank you. We love you. And keep it nerdy, y'all.